more exciting. Okay, so as I was saying, my name is Michael Corbett. I'm on the board of directors here at the museum, the Wayne County Museum. And today we have a very special guest for you who I now declare my new best friend in the whole wide world, Miss Helen Goldsby. Helen is a Goldsboro native. She has appeared on Broadway. She is a former Miss Goldsboro. She is my favorite Miss Goldsboro. Nothing against you though, but she's my favorite. She's a former Miss New York, and like I said, she's my new best friend. Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Helen Goldsby.
Well, this is an honor. It's always good to be home. Let's take some. Well, I have to tell you that, should I leave it in? I guess, can I move it up a little bit? There we go. So I have to tell you that what Michael said is true. My professional debut was on Broadway, and directly after graduating from Juilliard, I was Miss New York the next month. And even with all of that, I learned my role for my career debut in one night, and debuted, Baptism by Fire. And so, even with all of that, when I got Jennifer's email confirming our day today, I got so nervous. I was terrified because while it's easy to perform in front of strangers all day, it is the hardest to come home because home is family, right? And so you want it to be perfect, and you want to be perfect. But thank you. Thank you for your love and support. Thank you for this amazing exhibit. Thank you that I am able to experience something while the Lord has allowed me to yet be alive and see something like this and experience it while I am here still experiencing this journey with you. So thank you. I want to say thank you to the Wayne County Museum. Anytime something like this happens, what I did, especially on the way here today, I thought about all of what had to take place in order for this exhibit to even be, right? And the journey that it took. And so after I talk just a little bit, I am going to open it up so we can have a Q&A and exchange with each other. So you can ask me about the journey or about whatever you want. You don't necessarily have to hear about my journey. But I do want to acknowledge the Wayne County Museum and thank you, because prior to any of this taking place and us being here today together, there had to be a meeting or several that took place. There was a lot of planning, and the thought of meetings taking place and someone thinking of me is very humbling. And so I want to thank you. I don't take that lightly. It is such an honor, and God bless you. I'm always here for you with anything that you may need in the future. I also want to take the time to acknowledge just a few people who played such a huge part in my journey, getting me here to this day. And some are still with us and some are not. So in particular, I would like to start with thanking, this is going to be very, very strange and random, but my elementary school principal, Mr. Gainey. He was my principal. My class opened up North Drive School. We started at William Street School. I did kindergarten and first grade at William Street School, which I know now is a place of help. And then we opened up North Drive School. Mr. Gainey was my principal. Mr. Gainey gave me a spanking. He took his belt off and spanked me in his office. And after he spanked me, he hugged me. And he told me to sit, and he gave me a lecture, and then sent me back to my second grade class with Miss Britt. I never forgot that, because whatever I had done, he deemed that I needed to get stung for it. But how he cared for me afterwards, I never forgot. Mr. Gainey was a gentle soul. I don't even know if he's still with us on this plane, but I do want to acknowledge him because that discipline and that love in the second grade is something that I've carried with me. I'd like to acknowledge my middle school principal, Mr. Gerald Whitley. Mr. Whitley saved me from my bullies, and I had plenty of them. And one day, they used to find me at lunch and corner me off. You know, bullies have to get you by yourself. And I guess Mr. Whitley had gotten wind of it. And the next thing I know, if you guys remember Mr. Whitley, he was a tall man. He was a former basketball player. He was fine, too. And he saved me. And I never forgot that either, you know. And it never escaped me that these were two principals of mine, authority figures in my life. And not only did he save me from my bullies, but Mr. Whitley saved me from myself. So there was a point in middle school, which I'm sure is a point for everybody in middle school, because middle school is tough. I don't even understand why it's necessary, because you barely make it out, right? And so there was a time in middle school where I became troubled, quite troubled. Things were beginning to catch up with me. And if you know my story, you know what I mean. And I started choosing kind of the wrong crowd and ended up making some wrong decisions, skipping class. Now, when your grandfather is the truant officer for all of the city schools, that's not so smart, right? Got caught, of course, and was placed in what we used to call ISP. I don't know what they call it now, it's in-school suspension, but we used to call it in-school prison, because they used to make us clean up the trash in front of the whole school. Never went back, but I did go. And it was at this time when most of the time people start, you know, okay, we see what road she's going down, and they start tossing you away. And Mr. Whitley didn't do that. Mr. Whitley knew my family. Mr. Whitley knew, as he said, you come from good stock. You know better than this. And he didn't necessarily coddle me, but he did put things inside of me that I didn't necessarily think of myself. So I want to acknowledge him for that, and he is no longer with us. I'd like to acknowledge Mrs. Dolores Hayes. Mrs. Hayes was my history teacher, and she was also a very, very close family friend, so she was auntie as well. But Mrs. Hayes was a vault that all of us at Goldsboro High School could go to and confide in. And I told Mrs. Hayes a lot of things that I know went with her when she went to the ancestral plane. So I want to acknowledge her. She saw way more in me than I did. And she also journeyed with me when I began to compete in Miss Goldsboro, which was my first pageant. We'll talk about that. I'd like to acknowledge also my English teachers, Mrs. Farmer, Mrs. Adams, and Ms. Delaney. These women taught me how to write. And I cannot begin to tell you how that skill has played such a crucial part in my journey and in my career. Now I know you're saying, but you're a singer and an actress. It plays a part, because I'm also an author. And these three women not only taught me how to write, but told me that I could write. And then they taught me how to present myself. So it was important to me as I was coming back to really reach back and at least touch a few people who played such a significant role in my life as I was matriculating through Goldsboro City Schools, which is now Wayne County Public Schools, and really planted the seeds that allowed me to understand that I could be exactly what I was seeing. And that's what we're going to talk just a little bit about today. I often hear so many times people saying to me, how in the world did you come from Goldsboro, North Carolina, and end up where you ended up? Well, there were a few short years that my family and I lived in the West Haven public housing. And believe it or not, it was there that I began to understand exactly what was taking place with me. I saw a commercial one day, and it was Leontine Price singing for the United Negro College Fund. But prior to that, I would go on gigs. My mom said she never considered them gigs, but my mom was the ultimate wedding singer, oratorio singer around the city. You know, Heaven's Messiah, every Christmas season, and I was right there with her. And mom had this amazing lyrical soprano voice. So the sound was something I grew up hearing, and I was accustomed to it. And then I heard my grandfather sing, who was an amazing baritone tenor. And so the sound I was accustomed to. It wasn't foreign to me at all. But then I saw this commercial, and Leontine Price, I said, well, she sounds like Mom. She sounds like Mom. I was about 9 years old, and I said, let me see if I can do that. I went into my room, and I remembered, we want to give our best, please understand. We're not asking for handouts, just a hand. And I made the sound. And it was then that I decided, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. But then, of course, living in an area where it was loaded with children, competition was always on the table. And so we went outside, as we did every day, because of course, I don't know why your parents thought you needed to be outside all the time. we were just outside. And then, of course, it's, well, let's race. And then I found out that God had put some fire in my feet, too. And so, one way or the other, that was what I decided I was going to do. And it got to a point where I did have to decide. I was either going to run professionally or I was going to sing professionally. Acting, I knew, was always on the back burner, but I never, ever expected that it would be my debut. I say all that to say, there were times where all I did was sit in my room and learn music, Listen to WOKN, who I eventually began to work for when I was in high school, and learn music and songs, whether it was rhythm and blues, jazz, classical, oratorio, whatever it was. I was always doing and seeing my craft. So when it did happen, and it was time to make my professional debut on Broadway, I remember going to dinner that day and my friend saying to me, why are you so calm? Like, why aren't you freaking out? Like, do you understand what's getting ready to happen? And I said, yes, I do. And this was a plan. I saw this when I was 9. And that was not to be arrogant, but it is to show and to teach what has proven itself to be true over and over again. That there is no success, there is no crowning, there is no win without you seeing it first. You have to see it. And so, for all of you involved in today, and those of you who came to visit with me and to spend time, I thank you. I am so, so very humbled. I ask that you would continue to just propel and push me. I feel like my journey is literally just beginning. I've been at this for quite a while, and I have been very blessed, and still very blessed, to make a living as a singer and actress. And I live in North Carolina. I don't live in New York anymore. So that just goes to show you that that also has a testimony attached to it, that, you know, there's nothing impossible when you believe and see. So thank you very much. I would like to acknowledge my mother, who is with me today, and that voice that I told you about is certainly straight from her and from Jesus. She would kill me if I didn't say it. But I do want to acknowledge my mother and thank you so much for all of your support. My mother, actually, when I told my mother I wanted to major in music, she said that that's what you should do, which I now know, and even as I matriculated through Howard in the music department, it's really unheard of. Most parents say, you know, well, you need something else, you need something to fall back on, and Mom never said that. She always supported me every step of the way, even making my talent gown for Miss Goldsboro the night before the pageant. So, thank you so much. I told Mom that I was not singing today, but I am, because she was so mad when I got to the house. And I said, well, you can't disappoint your mom. So we are going to sing a little something for you today. I'm super tired, but this is for you, Mom. Son, are you ready? Yes. This is my son, my 14-year-old giant. I don't. So then when I'm done, we can open up the floor. Make sure that The clips for this are right here, okay? The stand clips. I'll make sure I put them on. Okay. All right, I'm coming down. Who's first? You first.
What made you decide to compete in the Miss Goldsboro pageant and the Miss America organization overall?
Oh, that's a great question. So, is this okay, guys? Or should I be in the tree? Is this okay? This is okay? So, there used to be a bridal shop called Blake's here in Goldsboro. I would love to know where Blake is, because it's all his fault. I was in there one day with my mom. I was home from school on a weekend, and I needed a gown for my senior recital at Howard. And Blake looked at me and he was like, well, I mean, what do you need a gown for? I had really long, back then in the 90s, the braids that we used to wear, we used to call them dookie braids. They were real thick. You know, so it was about 10 of them, and they were down here. I had on a dashiki and ripped jeans with some Birkenstock. That was my uniform back in the day. And I told him, I said, well, I need a gown for my senior recital in college. And he looked at me like, he said, well, what do you do? I said, I'm a singer. He said, well, sing me something. Just like that. So I sang Tosca. And he picked up the phone and he said, we got our 5th girl. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, you're going to compete for Miss Goldsboro. And I was like, absolutely not. So I was probably about 30 pounds heavier than I am now. And then I said to him, this is a lesson, I was limiting myself. I said, well, that won't work anyway, because I've never been in a pageant, and Miss Goldsboro's always right. I was 22 when I said that. Like, how cringy is that? And then he had one better, and he said, well, she's not this year, because it's Inga Davis. And she was the first African-American Miss Goldsboro. Inga and I were best friends in the 4th grade, and she crowned me Miss Goldsboro. So that's how I ended up in the MAO system. And then the next thing I know, I was first runner-up in Miss North Carolina. I had no idea still what I was doing whatsoever. But it was fun. And when I got to Juilliard and saw how much scholarship money I got, I was like, ooh, we gonna do this again. And then it just became a goal when I didn't win Miss New York that first year. And as you know, I don't know if you guys know, but the Miss America organization is an organization that likes to see you matriculate. So it wasn't until years and years after I had been involved, and even after I started pageant coaching, that I learned the system of Miss America, well, all pageant systems really. It's a humbling technique that takes place. Is that they like to see you matriculate, because they like to see the ongoing participation, for one. And for two, I wasn't ready. I thought I was, but I wasn't ready to be Miss North Carolina or Miss New York the year that I did win. And it was in due time, at the time that it was supposed to happen, is when I got my state title. And even though it's not something in show business that you highlight, because they don't really respect us in the pageant industry, but it is something that I highlight, because of the platform, which is now a social initiative program, I was able to get laws changed in New York State. And I'm very proud of that, and I would have never been able to do that without the platform of the Miss America organization. So that's a great question. I talk about it a lot, and yeah, you guys better be glad I'm not able to compete anymore though, because I got my body back now, honey. Yes?
Well, we're very excited you're here, because it's not often we get bona fide movie stars in the house. And so I'm wondering, what was your experience on the set of Harriet like? And do you feel like your pageant experience helped you in any way when it came to filming and kind of, because I've heard it's quite grueling.
So that's a great question. So Harriet, what was it like being on the set of Harriet, and did pageantry help? Pageantry helps in everything. And I'm going to tell you why. Because it is extremely, as you know, it's a competitive business. And once you hit set, you know, even before action is called, you're on. It is a competitive business. And I learned, I had already been a track athlete one way to compete. But pageantry and show business are very, very similar. And it taught me how to put my head down and go to work. How not to get involved in the little cliques and circles of all which is how I believe I have been so able to live in Charlotte and travel all over the country and go back and forth to New York and LA and wherever I need to go for work and book, because I put my head down and I go to work. So it did help in that respect. It never helps with nerves. I'm always scared to death. Always. I'm always shaking in my boots. But it did help me to know how to really be a professional and really present myself, having to do interviews. You know, that really helped me quite a deal, because you do have to do, you know, a lot of interviewing in show business. But being on the set of Harriet, it came at a time in my life where that was one of those valleys. I was in a valley in my life when I booked Harriet. And so I told my agent, I was like, well, this is perfect, because I'm going to be a freed slave, but a slave nonetheless, and I don't feel glamorous at all right now, so this is great. What I was not anticipating was the significance of the work. And I remember going to my wardrobe fitting, which is separate. You go and you get fitted for your wardrobe and blah, 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 and then you go back to work. And I remember being fitted for my wardrobe, and once they got the last piece on, and it was quite layered, I had about 9 petticoats on, it was something crazy. And I remember getting the last piece placed on me, and a dread came over the entire room. And I just said to everyone in there, I said, I need the room, please, I need the room. And before they closed the door, the water just started running down my face. And it was as though the presence of, I was playing, of course, a real live person who had been alive. And it was as though that had entered into the room. And so a few weeks later, once I was called to set to shoot Harriet, I asked Cynthia, who played the title role, I said, has it been like this the whole time? Just really heavy and really, and she looked at me and said, the whole time. They have been here. It was an amazing experience. It taught me, it was the first time I'd ever played someone who had actually been a real person. So it taught me how to respect that station and not treat it like a character, but to really lean in and to play Hanny as the person that she was, which was awesome, because I ended up doing that again this past January, playing a real person who's actually still alive for the show Dope Sick, which will be out next month. Thank you, it's a good question.
What's the one theater role you would love to play?
Bess. Porgy and Bess.
I have a favorite I would love for you to play. Sarah in Ragtime.
Sarah in Ragtime, yes, indeed. Definitely my Fogg, definitely. Yeah, but still chasing Bess. I'm still told that my voice isn't still quite big enough for it, but I think as a musical theater piece, as opposed to the operatic version, because the orchestration is so heavy, operatically, I can see that, but musical theater, I think I could pull it off. What do you think, Michael? You think I can?
You're good.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm a former English teacher, so I was interested in your comments about your English teachers and how they helped you with the writing. Could you comment on that?
Yes. You know, I often think about this, and I don't get to see those teachers quite a bit. I did years as Miss Goldsboro. I went into the schools and had the opportunity, and I was able to talk with those teachers. I still wasn't quite convinced that I was a writer yet. But as time went on and I began writing, I remember fighting against learning the different parts of grammar. I'm like, why is this? I mean, why is this important? I'm gonna be famous. What is she talking about? And why do I need to know who Hester Prynne is? Like, what is going on? It
taught me and equipped me with tools that made me feel intelligent and made me feel powerful. And even now, and my son is here and can attest to it, my writing skills still amaze me because of the different drills. I get upset now when, looking at my kids' work, because it doesn't seem quite the same as when we were in school. What I thought was so unnecessary, and the repetition and learning all the different parts of speech. It's a tool and a power that no one can take away from me, and that the well of knowledge is so deep because of writing and repetition and having me to recount what I've read in essay. God, I was like, Mr. Delaney assigns one more essay. I mean, like one more, okay? Like I'm going, oh. It's also what got me into college. I was not a fantastic student because I wasn't interested. However, the rule in our house was nothing below a C, period. Like that, it wasn't happening. So I was a pretty, riding the fence A/B student. And so when I got into Howard, my mom was like, well, are you sure? My test scores weren't very high. I was dyslexic and wasn't diagnosed yet. So we just couldn't quite figure out, and everybody just, oh, she's an artist, she's just not interested. No, she had learning disabilities too, but we'll talk about that later. But my essay, and I was later told by the president of the university, is what got me into college. That, and being pretty well-rounded, being a part of clubs, being a part of, volunteering within the city. And then, holding a pretty decent, ride the fence, be average. But the essay is what got me in there. And I just never, ever thought that writing would be as powerful of a tool and a powerful force as it is in my life. And so it was important to me to make sure that I make mention of those three women, because it changed the course of my life. I was asked as Miss New York to rewrite the bill that later became law as the Goldsby Miss New York law. I was asked to rewrite that. Now, first of all, what if I couldn't write? And they gave me that. And so at 24 years old, and the governor signed my name into law, that was a part of their success as well, because if not, those many, many, many nights in Albany as we sat around that table and I, with my hand, rewrote that bill, would not have been possible. So, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for your good acts.
Right here and then you.
When did you stop doing track?
I stopped running in college. It got to a point where I had to make a decision. And so I was running for Howard for a while, but then I also became the university cantor, which means singer, and I would travel with the university president as a part of my scholarship. And so then I had to make a decision. So it was right around my second or third year of college.
Hi. Okay, I actually have two questions.
Okay.
Okay. The first question is, what type of advice do you have for, I know you said you got inspired by the Leontine Price commercial at 9. So what advice do you have for younger children that might, catch that musical inspiration bug at a young age, just to carry throughout life? And also, as a huge P-Valley fan, when is season 2 premiering?
Season 2 is not out until 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still shooting it actually. So I'll head down in a couple weeks to shoot episode 4 or 5. So yeah, 2022, early 2022 though, I've heard.
Okay,
so.
that's nice. Thank you.
But the advice that I would give to any young musician is, first you have to pay attention to how it calls you as well. I was never interested really in going outside. I was always more interested in being in my room and learning music. And so if that is the case with you, it's called you, you know? If it's not calling you that way, it doesn't mean that you won't have a career or it's not within you. But it is something that you have to nurture, and it is something that you have to handle every day. Because that is telltale as to whether or not you have it in you to continue on. It's not an easy career to have. So the love of it has to be there, and the discipline has to be there. It is also a very lonely life, and I don't mind telling my age. I'm 50, so I have just settled and accepted the loneliness part of being an artist. You mentioned Pete Valley, and I was just in Atlanta a few weeks ago shooting an episode, and I remember just laying on my bed in the hotel, and I just prayed, and I was like, Lord, I'm lonely. You know, I'm booked, I'm on a hit show, but I'm lonely. And the Lord, said, oh, that's nice. Find a movie. Find a movie, honey. It was a million other girls that wanted your part. Find a movie. We not feeling sorry for you. But it is a lonely life, and there is a part of it that you just have to accept, because there is so much preparation that has to take place before you get in front of the camera or before you get in front of the microphone that can only be done alone. So that's a part of it that no one told me, but I was pretty okay and already okay with it, because I had learned how to cocoon myself with my music. But as you get older, you want to turn up. So, and you won't always be able to do that. So discipline is something that you're going to have to become very comfortable with at a very young age. Yes. Hey, Miss Minnie.
And we both grew up in the same church.
Yes, same my church.
I mean, your great grandma, your grandmother really. But how was it hard for you to transfer from gospel music to the type of music you sing today?
It was not a difficult transition. She asked if it was hard for me to transition from gospel to classical. It was not, because I was not a good gospel singer at all.
You were one of the best sopranos in the world.
I was always a soprano. So every gospel song sounded like Summertime. I was not a very good gospel singer, because that's really just not my strongest voice. But the elders gonna make you sing. So you're gonna sing. You're gonna sing when we tell you to sing. And so I enjoyed singing gospel. I still do. And I enjoyed R&B. One of the gigs that I got early on in college, because see, my plan was to go to college and be discovered, not graduate. Mama didn't know that. I was going to DC because it was bigger than Goldsboro, and I was like, I'm gonna get discovered. At that point, I still thought I was gonna be an R&B singer. And I did. I got a gig singing background for Johnny Gill and Stacey Lattisaw. And went on the road. And Mama was like, you better get off the road. Oh no. When I called her from Philly, she said, and you better Philly right on back to DC. Motown Records worked something out with Mom, and they promised to keep me in school and away from drugs. I ended up getting with, and see, this is just having a praying mama and daddy, for real. Because Stacey was a Christian to her soul. She meant it. So she didn't tolerate, drugs and all the stuff all the trappings. And that was my first gig. It was perfect. I loved it, but it did teach me that my strongest voice was classical. That was what my calling was for, as far as the music was concerned. And I kind of took that experience and tucked it, and they're great memories. But as soon as I made that decision, everything opened up, and that let me know that was what the call was. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. How is Jean?
I wanted to know about the law that you
Yes.
and also what you have written.
Yes, ma'am. So the law, the bill, once I became Miss New York, my platform was awareness of child sexual abuse, child molestation. And I spoke very openly about it, which is groundbreaking. let's just go back to Miss Goldsboro. I was Miss Goldsboro in 1992, the second African American, and was talking about child sexual abuse. Not one time, not once, did anyone say, "Are you sure? You know, that's going to be a little controversial." Not anyone. Not my parents, not one JC who was in charge of the pageant back then, not my business manager, Steve Mitchell, who to this day is probably the best business manager I've ever had. And that also spoke to me being called. It was something bigger than me being in the pageant. It was meant for me to talk about this and to make this aware in my community. So when I became Miss New York, the next day, the New York Coalition Against Sexual Assault contacted me and asked if I would be a spokesperson for them. And I said, yeah, okay. Then they really told me what they wanted. And we want to know if you would help us lobby this bill. So once I read the bill was about helping victims of child sexual abuse prosecute their abusers. And it was, of course, all messed up. And our laws are messed up in this country regarding this topic. Very lenient. They get less time than, they get a lot less time than what you would imagine. In the New York State at that time, the victim had to report before the age of 18, which is almost impossible. They also had very strict law and very strict statute of specificity. They had to be extremely specific about each detail of the abuse. And the statute of limitations was 5 years. So what I was able to do when I rewrote the bill was I told those statute of limitations until upon discovery. Because what I was able to convince and talk about in Albany with the House in New York is that a lot of the times you are unaware until you are much older and your memory unlocks. Something happens for you that can jog that up and bring that back up for you. So it was important to me to have that specificity statute completely eradicated. We were able to do that. We were able to get a little more time with what the maximum time was for the abusers. And it also completely told the statute of limitations. So that was, I had to learn quickly all of the legal jargon, but what I did have was the experiential knowledge that they needed for this bill in order to get it down to a point where it made sense to lay politicians that, when I said, now think about if it was your granddaughter or your grandson, and if this happened at age 16, and their abuser was someone who was 18 or older, but they had no memory of it until they were 25, because that's what happens. In order for us to survive and to thrive, our memories protect us. Our brains protect us. And once I was able to get that down into the legal jargon that they were able to understand and use examples of myself and project it onto them, it happened. I was blown away. And will never forget how that felt once I got the call saying that it had been signed. Because I knew at that point, if I died that day, I had made a difference. And that's why it's important that you're doing what you're doing. And why any of you having anything that is near and dear to your heart, whether you are the youngest one in the room or the oldest one, to put your feet to the ground and dig in and do something. Because the least little thing that you might think would be nothing can turn into something pretty fantastic for your legacy. So I'm really grateful about that.
Some of the you said you were more some of the have you written like a book or?
Well, yes, I actually have. I've written a book of poetry and my story, which will be. I think I'll be ready to let it go in 2022. It's been a long road with that, but I have finally finished it. So yeah, that's been a journey, and that's also what allowed me to see kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, I can actually write. And where did I learn to write? And it was right here in Goldsboro. Yes.
So, I know you said you would probably touch on dyslexia later on, but with it being close to my family, because I have a husband and 2 children who are very dyslexic, and I do my best to campaign for my children in the public school system.
Good luck with
So
that.
that they can get what they need.
Mm-hmm. Same.
So not with just dyslexia, but any learning disability in that fact. I want to praise you
And I have
for
several.
not letting it hold you back. And just, I guess, touch on how not to let it hold you back.
Right, so mine was undiagnosed, the good old 70s and 80s. You just got beaten and said and told that the Lord don't like lazy people, and so you go on doing the best they could. But let's see, 21, I was in Aspen, Colorado at a music festival, and at what we call a Zitz probe, which is the orchestral rehearsal before the actual show, where you're going line by line, note by note, making sure everything is right. And I sang an entire line of Verdi backwards. I read it backwards, I saw it backwards, and I sang it backwards. And that's pretty doggone genius. But it was very incorrect. And the maestro at the time, pulled me to the side and was like, yep, that was pretty genius, but you need to go and get a test. And sure enough, I was dyslexic. And then it dawned, I was like, so this was what was wrong with me in school. They owe me some grades. Because it took me so long. I was such a slow reader. And I couldn't figure out why. I love to read, avid reader, but it took me a long time. It did not take me a long time with music. And it was because music is fluid. And what I later learned after I was tested was that I'm one of those readers that it has to flow, it has to be fluid. I have to track, I have to see line by line. Not all dyslexic people are that way. It scrambles differently for different people, but mine really scrambles. So I have to go line by line. But it was difficult. But once I got diagnosed, I really felt free and a lot better, because it's tough because you feel not so smart, And a lot of the times the teachers don't know. And so they just kind of get frustrated with you and move on to the next because you're taking too long, or whatever the case is. But turns out that's what it was for me. That's what it was, and processing. So, yeah, didn't know until I was an adult though. Mom and them owe me some, they owe me some stuff too. Make sure I get that back. Anyone else? Guys, thank you so very much. I am so humbled to be here. I do have, I do have a few photos if anyone wants some. And, that's food back there? Probably can't have it. I gotta shoot. I gotta shoot in 2 weeks though. If I eat those cookies today, in 2 weeks that camera hits me and say, hello girl, remember those cookies? But after the shoot though, I eat. Like after the pageant, you know how you eat after the, oh my God, I eat after the shoot. So thanks again guys, thank you so much. And yeah, just know that I'm always here for Goldsboro, always. I love you, thank you.
That was wonderful, Helen. Thank you. We are thrilled that Helen came all this way to make an appearance here at the museum. It's very, very exciting for us. And I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. I loved it. This was one of my favorites. I know that, Helen, because you are an advocate for young people and an inspiration, I think, to a lot of young people who hear your story and how you kind of made your dreams come true. The museum has a donor who is going to sponsor, in honor of you, the Helen Goldsby scholarship to our local stage-struck children, young people's theater. so that they can use it in a variety of ways. It's going to be, they can use it for classes, they can use it for auditions, they can use it for music lessons. However the individual student needs to use it, it will be used. So thank you. So much. And I hope while you're here, you will take the time to check out the Stars, Stages, and Screens exhibit downstairs. There is video of Helen in a few roles singing. There's also some photos of her. There's a really grisly photo of her in the makeup chair for Hanny in the film period. She has a brand on her chest in the film that
took 2 hours to get on and 2 hours to get off. And then it was on there, the mark was for about 4 months after the
Oh my God. So there's some wonderful photos downstairs of her career. Also one of her pageant gowns is down there. And you can see how much thinner she is than the gown.
Yeah, I was working back then.
And also, you are not 50 years old. You are a liar.
I am.
I do not believe it. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
So thank you. Anyway, we have refreshments for you back here. Please make yourselves at home in the museum. Thank you so much for coming and supporting a local movie star. Thank you.